a reason your whole world shatters after narcissistic abuse. And you feel like Humpty Dumpty trying to put yourself back together again. You feel like you'll never trust anyone else. You feel like you'll never trust yourself, and you feel like you'll never be whole. And the reason for that is because you were living in an alternate reality when you were in that narcissistic trauma bond. When the narcissist enters your life and they start to idealize you, mirror you, and love bomb you, giving you all of the attention and affection that you ever wanted and needed, it's like a balm. It soothes and satisfies any unmet needs that you had from past trauma or from your childhood. And because they're meeting those needs and anticipating your needs and just being the ideal partner for you, you fall in love with them. But in reality, you fall in love with their representative. It's the person they've constructed, the mask that they've constructed in order to seduce you and to trap you into this controlling cycle and this controlling dynamic. And it's analogous to the way you boil a frog. If you just throw the frog into boiling water, the frog will simply hop out of the water because it recognizes the extreme shift in the temperature from the room temperature to the temperature of the boiling water. But if you put that same frog into water that's the same temperature as the room, and then ever so gradually turn up the heat, the frog doesn't have the internal regulation to be able to detect the slow change. It'll think that the room temperature is just gradually going up and there's no significant change, and so it won't be triggered to jump out of the water. And before you know it, that frog will be boiled alive. And that's how it is when you enter into that shared fantasy with the narcissist. It's like that lukewarm water that feels comforting, that feels safe. And then ever so gradually, as they come to see that you're your own person, you have your own thoughts, your own needs, your own autonomy, you want to do certain things, and you have expectations of them. And you start to try to resolve problems. And they use Darvo, they deny, attack, and reverse the role of victim and defender. They project onto you. They gaslight you. They use other people as pawns against you to mentally control you and emotionally manipulate you. And they do all of that because they've relegated you to a role. They've relegated you to a function that is designed not to be in a relationship, but to feed them supply, to feed the fantasy world that they live in, and to boost up their ego, and to make them feel like they're the center of your universe. And so they reduce you to a function, much like an alternator in a car that continually keeps the battery charged. That's how they need you to function in their life, like something that just perpetually feeds them the fuel that they need to survive and to keep going. But when you refuse to play that role because you have an expectation of reciprocity, you expect them to reciprocate all of the love and the commitment and the sacrifice that you've been giving to them, then they're so selfish and so shallow that they're not able to do that, because you were never really a person to the narcissist. You were a mirror, and they couldn't function in that relationship unless the image you reflected back to them was an ideal image, something that they could look at and see as the ideal person that they want to be. But when you saw them for who they really were, and you saw the flaws, and you saw all of the things that they were doing that they were trying to hide, that cracked the mask, and it ruptured the fantasy world. And it's when that happens that the whole fantasy starts to break apart. And when it breaks apart, your role within that fantasy, at the point of the discard, your role dies. The fantasy dies. And the person you thought the narcissist was, that person dies, because you've awakened and you see clearly. And it's analogous to waking up from a dream. And a lot of times when you can't remember the dream, but you remember the emotional impact of the dream, that is how it is a lot of times, because you experienced betrayal blindness. There were certain things that you didn't see. Your mind protected you from a lot of the things that were happening in that relationship. And so just as a person struggles to try to remember the details of the dream, your mind starts to struggle to remember all of the details that led to this hellish reality that you find yourself in. You try to make sense of this new narrative that you've been thrust into, oftentimes against your will. And you're just trying to put those pieces together and connect the dots. And the key to resolving the cognitive dissonance and the rumination is to be able to reconstruct the narrative, not through the rose-colored lens of the fantasy world, of that shared fantasy, but through a lens of clarity. You have to go back to the narrative shifting memories and reframe those memories in a way that constructs a new story that allows you to gain closure, to have closure over that situation and move on with your life.